Cool, cool,
Welcome
cool.
to the Sprocket Pod. We have myself, Cameron Collins, host of Sprocket Pod, and we have Mark Lerner, co-host of Sprocket Pod, and we have our guest, Caleb. Caleb,
Hello.
go ahead and say hello and introduce yourself to everyone watching.
Hi, my name is Caleb. I'm a senior inbound consultant at HubSpot. And yeah, I don't know, prominent random conspiracy theorists about what can come next in business opportunities.
Oh. We'll be getting into plenty of conspiracy theories here coming up, but I think the most important conspiracy theory that we address is, are you really the famous drop down select in
Yes.
Discord?
Yes, I in this Sprocket Discord I was drop down select. I didn't know if people were going to be using their real names because I've seen previous Discords where people are like Flower Moon 997. And I was like, this is going to be so embarrassing if I go in and everyone is like a Tolkien character and I'm Caleb King. So I set it to a HubSpotty thing, which is that I have strong feelings about using drop down select properties instead of single line text.
I'd love to dig into that. What is the opinion there for single line text versus dropdowns?
It got started with job title. So there was an IT security company that I supported on an implementation, and they'd been capturing it as single line text. And they almost, I think they refused to move their forms over to dropdown, but they wanted personas set up. So in order to set up personas, we needed to export their single line text job titles, make a pivot table of that export, and then make a pivot table of that pivot table in order to find the most commonly matched values. And now for many businesses, single line text for job title really doesn't work, or at least for the sales submission process. But for marketing, for early funnel stages, and for several industries and companies, you can restrict it. And for this one, for IT security, you could, right? CIO, CTO, or like executive in IO or TO. And then you can go director plus whatever level. So it did work. And so I was just very passionate that this company, they really had no strong reason not to move to drop down select other than one senior person's vibe. And they were spending many dollars on having employees do pivot tables of pivot tables instead of just swapping forms over.
I can say from everyone in the RevOps community and the Sprocketeer community, thank you for all of the uh, work that you did without the spotlight, because I know that you've helped answer many questions and you have solved many problems without really any recognition. So thank
I,
you.
yeah, I love that though, because I didn't want people to think, I don't know, Big Brother was watching. Like in all reality, just another dude who knows workflows. And so the anonymous username allowed me to do that. And even now, people aren't like scoping my Slack profile every single time. So I still get to be a little bit anonymous.
And so you mentioned there really going in and being the dude who knows workflows. I know that one of your specialties is HubSpot forensics. How did you really get into getting to the point where your expertise being able to find errors, fix workflows, figure out what the problem is?
Oh God, just people. So I think like one of the dirty secrets of whether it's HubSpot agencies or just HubSpot implementation people, even if you're a freelancer, is that like you always want to set up a project plan. You want to rehabilitate the sales operations and then call three in your lovely Asana tracker. The customer shows up and they've accidentally blown up 800 deal records and like they don't care about the project plan. They need to fix this thing they broke. And so I think I got good at that and became a person for that because I want to stick to the project plan, but if you're telling me that you have 20 AEs at your gate with pitchforks and torches, like I want to help you calm down that crowd and fix the issue because that, for many reasons, is a bigger problem right now than did you do your homework from last week's project check in. Um, and because on many of those calls, we might have had like 5 or 6 HubSpot enabled folks, and a couple of them were getting beat. And so, like, my competitive part was like, if I can be the one person out of 6 that can crack this, then that's pretty cool. So, I think I also really wanted to dive in and know how to do that because it was beating other people who were familiar with the tools.
Mhm. And
And
it,
I
it
bet
really
people
is.
are super grateful for it. It's like you go into a doctor when you're a chiropractor when your neck is like completely killing you and you're just one thing and makes it feel better. I bet you get that kind of reaction. Yes.
And so it really is like a superpower being able to go in, find things that are broken, figure out how to fix them. I'm curious because I know we're going to be talking about HubSpot growing into being an enterprise system.
Yeah.
Do you generally find that it makes a difference if it's a larger versus smaller company, the types of problems you're seeing or the ability to go in and fix those problems? Are enterprise companies presenting more complex errors because they have more built into HubSpot? Or is that
Not
not?
necessarily. They just have more noise. Like when you go in and look at an activity timeline of a record, there's just more lists and workflow and garbage to filter through. So with larger companies or not even larger companies, but portals with larger account records and larger infrastructure, because you could have a small company that's gone wild. There's just more noise to filter out. And so you need to, we all joke about like closing out your tabs. You need to be hyper focused on what tabs you open when you're doing forensics in order to actually find what the problem was. Because you could open everything in a 20 workflow activity timeline.
Yeah, I think that's really important is having some way to stay focused. I'm still trying to figure out how I can do that myself. And I'm working with 3 to 5 partners at any given time. And so I know it's really important as the admin going in and especially if you have something that's broken and you're trying to pinpoint it, just really honing in on I need to figure out what's happening. I need to figure out how to fix it and make sure that we make all nice and dandy so we can move on and everyone adopts HubSpot perfectly because it always
Yeah.
works out that way.
Yeah. My favorite one, I can give people like a 2-second nugget that's really fun. If
Yep.
you ever think a record got changed by a workflow, but you don't see that workflow as having interacted, if you go to the records timeline and you don't see that workflow at all, you might be dealing with a workflow that's based on a separate object type, but it's updating associated objects or it's copying a
Mm.
property over. So you won't see that workflow if a deal record is modifying that deal's associated context property values. On the contact record, you won't see the workflow ever at all listed, but you will see a property change. So that's a really fun one that can stump people a lot.
And do you get any sort of internal tools that help you do better forensics, or do you have to use the same stuff we do?
I not really. There's some internal stuff on, I think, email health that I just found out about yesterday. And I think there's like some API things for troubleshooting integrations that I also don't use. But no, when it comes to like, how did this record do what? The thing is, the people who are using the portal without any in-house tools accidentally broke it. So without anything internal, I can track down what they did. It's just difficult. No, I really don't use anything internal that people don't have access to.
So I think that's actually really awesome then, because at the end of the day, it really goes to show how anybody can come in and learn how to use the CRM. Anybody can learn how to use the software. And then really at that point, it's the individual's ability to go in and perform, right? So it's not like you have some kind of secret tool that I wouldn't have access to, but knowing, hey, if one object has a workflow trigger that updates another object, you're not going to see everything on both objects, right? And little nuggets like that go a long way. I want to dive into, I know we're going to be talking about opportunities in the partner ecosystem, but what are some of the ways that you stay ahead of all of the updates or keep tabs on really just furthering your education when it comes to getting better and better at forensics and just using HubSpot in general?
Okay. So I will say on keeping up on product updates, I maybe do have an inside edge because I get emails every day from the product team. I get about 5 to 10 emails on, I don't get anything for alpha. I get private beta, public beta, and live. So often for any given update, I'll get 3 emails over the course of however many months. And to be honest, shout out Evelyn Wang. She's a product marketing manager here at HubSpot. And on HubSpot.com/new, she's the one that uploads that deck. So now we're in November. The October deck will be updated in about 2 weeks, 2.5. Don't quote me on that timeline for her. The November deck will be uploaded. And her deck is probably the single most comprehensive way. Now, are you going to be posting updates faster than you, Cameron, or Karen Tamir, who I know post updates really quickly, or Ryan Gunn, or all these folks? No, you're not going to be faster to the trigger than them. But if you want one deck that sorts it by hub, shows you what hub level have access to those tools, I still use her deck and I send her deck to every single one of my customers as like if you want to look at the hubs you use and understand what major things have happened, this is the cleanest, most succinct resource and then so it's her deck, which is on HubSpot.com/new. The other one for people who are very much actively like molding the clay of their own portal, if you click on your business name in the top right and then you go to product updates, like looking at those betas, and checking that once a week to say, is there anything here that I've been waiting for and posting on the community forum about? And can I turn this on right now? So did this thing happen and I should know about it? Or is there something that's coming and it's in public beta right now and I can opt myself into it?
Are there things that happen that customers come to you with that are like, you can immediately know it's this problem. You don't even really have to do the kind of forensics that you usually do. Is it something you see repeatedly?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes, I'll give you a common one. People use the wrong primary data source in custom report builds. So they say, hey, I'm trying to build this thing that looks at page views and contacts, and I keep getting a count of page views. Or a common one is, I want to see ad interactions, but I'm not getting my unique count of contacts. It's because you don't have whatever record you want to see a unique count of needs to be set as your primary data source. And I see that one almost on a weekly basis where they're like, this isn't working the way I thought. And it's just because it needs to be primary data source.
I can relate to that one for sure.
Yeah, I get it on deals all the time too. But there's also, I would say, there's almost a question mark. Like maybe I'm just going to rant here for 2 seconds.
That's okay. That's what this is for.
There's certain things that people ask me for that aren't necessarily forensics, but they're infrastructure that they want. And I know it doesn't exist because everyone always wants it. So one of the ones is in sales analytics, there's a default report for time in stage, but that doesn't give you a deal by deal, how long did this deal spend? Now, shout out to the product team. They rolled out stage calculated properties on contacts for life cycle stages. Ideally, maybe in my crystal ball, hopefully it's coming for deals. I don't know. But there's one workflow that I set up with people all the time to do custom date stamps and custom calculations to give time and stage at an individual deal level for that. Because so I see it's not forensics, but it's a thing people want. And the minute they start describing it, I almost want to cut them off and like just start building the workflow on the call.
Yeah.
Like my professionalism and discovery needs to wait, but I know, like I hear 3 words and I'm like, oh, you need custom date stamps and calculations.
All right, Caleb. So I'm going to throw you an easy one. Is there a tool or software that might make it really quick and easy to pull that type of workflow into someone's instance?
I'm guessing Deal Hub.
Yeah,
Super.
partially that's true. Yeah.
I'm guessing Deal Hub. I wouldn't be surprised if I currently am dealing with, I think a lot about sales maturation. And I'm guessing that I run into a crowd that is like 6 to 18 months away from the maturation point of realizing that they need Deal Hub. And by realizing that they need, I probably more mean being able to build a comprehensive business case for it.
Yeah.
Like if I just said like I'm dealing with people who are doing their first ever stage calculated property. Another one I do is like deal status for open one lost, because that's not a default property that cuts across all your pipes. And that gives you sales cycle reporting by rep and by pipe and things like that. Like I'm helping what I think of as like the middle school to high school or high school to college sales maturation. And I'm guessing Deal Hub is like the 301 class and above.
Exactly. True. Yes. So we like to say it's like the enterprise grade, not the enterprise pain.
Yeah.
So dovetailing that into trends that you see not just at a portal level, right? Because there are a lot of commonalities when you work with enough partners and portals and you start to see a lot of things that become common. And I know that becomes iterations for the product team to work on. Let's talk about it at a partner level when we're talking about just trends in the space. So I know we've talked about previously SmartBug they picked up Globalia, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the macro trends that you're seeing for partners, and what are some advice that you have for other partners that are continuing to grow?
Yeah, that's a good call. So I really like that after SmartBug acquired Globalia, I think Connor Jeffers had a post where he just said, so it begins, because I really think that's true, right? Like for all the people who are monitoring this partner ecosystem space, if a customer comes to me and says they knew HubSpot 4 years ago and they haven't seen it since, then we all know that they don't know HubSpot as it exists today and what it can do for their business. So when we talk about these acquisitions and things like that, I think it is truly growing. I know some people have floated, oh my God, are McKinsey and Deloitte going to come in and start offering? Who knows? I don't really know on that one. But I think where we're getting to is a place where, and Peter Caputo puts this really well from DataBox, and sorry if I said your name wrong, Peter, but he says this really, right? He says this really well of like people who can deliver against a niche are going to do really well. And I know some partners do everything, right? Like, so SmartBug and Globalia, they might be able to just like, hopefully they'll roll out some GPT wrapper of create your business and do nothing and just pay us 5,000 and you'll kick back 100 and you'll never have to do anything other than create your own LLC. I don't know, but they do everything. A couple other partners out there do everything. But some people just do one thing really well. And I think as HubSpot gets more complex and customizable at the enterprise level, I think industry specific players, especially with tools a la, are going to have a huge simplified selling process, because the pay by hour model creates really tough rates and problems and challenges. Whereas like part of the reason HubSpot can scale its revenue so well is like they don't have to hire an additional Caleb for every marketing hub they sell. They don't have to, we don't necessarily scale onboarding or service or really any team as far, and this isn't coming from inside knowledge, this is just BS that I think about as business, but like software businesses don't always scale headcount linearly with sales, whereas like agency retainers have to. You can't sell more hours without having more people. And so I think as it becomes enterprise, I'd be fascinated to see separate SKUs where with a tool like Super, like you just the recruitment space, and people pay you, I don't know, $20,000 to just kick up an enterprise suite portal, brand new, with everything that recruitment needs by default, workflows, properties, whatever it is. And then if you want, you have a separate SKU for customization. Here's this thing, we'll give it to you because we know this is what you need. Because that's, to be totally honest with you, and I'm going to say like I don't know, but there are players in the Salesforce space and in every other enterprise CRM space who all they do is sell you a net new portal customized to your business with basically no human touches or customization. They just say, oh, your car insurance, here's your portal. Thanks for the tens of thousands. Oh, you want other implementation and customization? Great. We have an ongoing SKU that we can sell you separate from that. And yeah, so anyways, I think that's a growth opportunity for partners, is to truly lock down an industry and then move away, for some people, move away from the selling hours to selling industry customized portals.
It's interesting. So this idea of productizing a service kind of thing, that's in this kind of solopreneur world, that's been a big thing, a leading indicator. So design agencies will do that. They'll sell productized service. And what you're talking about here is a similar thing where you're productizing the setup of a CRM for an industry specific use case. I'm interested both from you and Cameron, when we talk about HubSpot moving towards being an enterprise or supporting enterprise use cases, is that the definition of enterprise, being able to be this kind of vertical specific functionality, or is it more than that?
I think it's just being customizable enough to support verticals.
Yeah.
I think where people discount something being enterprise or not is, could we take, it's not about selling, I don't know, like being similar to B2C, right? Because for B2C, you can start out relatively simple. You need to collect money, you need to send, shipping label, whatever. But and there are advanced B2C use cases. I'm not going to discount that. I'm sure Walmart has some crazy customization. But on B2B enterprise, like conditional property values, right? Where you can now start exposing values only if the pipeline is this, having that customization available for a business of M&A or a business that is recruitment, but they do recruitment for tech companies in one pipe and this in another pipe, and they only want to have one property with their values instead of 5 clones of a property because they need to expose conditional values. So part of my own personal definition, totally separate from the corporate entity of HubSpot, is it customizable enough that someone could productize a industry specific portal with everything needed to operate efficiently?
Yeah. I think it's super interesting. I think there's clearly a transition going on. I think we all see it. Whereas HubSpot CRM was an add-on, free kind of Google Sheet sort of thing as an afterthought, and that it's ballooned into this now going head to head with the most well-known CRM out there. It's really impressive, and it's very clear that there's a lot going on behind the scenes to support that. It was very clear at Inbound. It's very clear since then. So it's very cool to watch.
Yeah. I will say any enterprise in-house admin whose company uses HubSpot should just send all their love and appreciation to Rachel Webb A lot of other people too. There's like Jake Leonard, but there's a lot of PMs working behind the scenes. I know Rachel Webb is behind conditional property values and conditional property options. And I know that those two recent things are things that people are psyched about. And there's many other PMs that I'm probably discounting in that statement, but she's awesome. She does a lot of cool stuff.
From me to Rachel, I say thank you because just this morning I've been setting up conditional properties all day for all different partners. And I think that when we talk about what constitutes HubSpot being a viable enterprise platform, I think that you really hit the nail on the head where it's really about, can a company that has complex motions get what they want to the level of customizability, right? So they don't want different business units seeing each other's elements. Maybe they want to have things a little bit more siloed. And so I think that definitely plays into that. And I know that one of the things that you had talked about previously was not just having vertical specific portals, really being able to break things down and offer the highest level of customizability from there. And I know that I'm sure that there's stuff in the works that you can't talk about, but what are some of the more commonly requested things that either are in the works that you can talk about, or some of the things that just in your own opinion, hey, HubSpot can start to move toward adopting?
I think so. There's something that's already live and it has a lot of updates requested and a lot of updates that are in the works right now. And I don't even know what exactly those updates are, but business units, I think, is a hot topic with any significantly advanced HubSpot partner or HubSpot customer. I have a very brash version of what I think business units started out as, but now it has grown into, I want my parent or my child companies to operate out of a single portal. I don't want to have to pay a developer in-house or otherwise to stand up integrations between multiple portals. I want to be able to create a single report that crosses all my child companies. And so that's where I mentioned Jake Leonard, PM that sits over business units. I think that is something that has seen a lot of updates that have been more advanced. So one of the ones that people might not know about is a public beta right now that launched a month ago for separate subscription preference management centers by BU. And there's more things coming there. I think what people may or may not realize with business units, if you only ever get asked about it on one implementation, is how different customers want it to operate. Some people want their marketers and salespeople to never see anything else at all, but they need those marketers and at least one of those marketers and salespeople to be essentially a super admin in that portal. So now we're bringing in a conversation about, is there a sub super admin role that can do everything, but only within a business unit? And that's basically a totally separate product update business units, but those two teams need to talk to get that to happen. Some people want fully separate, think about it like cell blocks almost, with like soundproof cell blocks. You can't see, you can't hear, you can't do a thing between those places. Some people want one multiversal marketer to sit over everything, but just brand kits are separated and there's different this and there's different subscription centers and different websites. So the request for business units is to be everything everywhere all at once. And so that's why it's pretty difficult, I believe, for that team to potentially prioritize updates, because many people want it to work in direct contradiction to how other people want it to work. But it's one of the single most important pieces for what I think we would all consider as like a single unified enterprise CRM.
So we spent a lot of time talking about enterprise. I know that HubSpot's making strides to really grow and expand, right? I don't think it's so much of maybe a change as it is just a development, and they're adding features and they're growing. I saw earlier today that there have been over 400 new product updates just over this past year, right? That is just insane. And so when we think about at the enterprise level, there's a lot of change happening, but I think it's also easy to forget that there are so many smaller businesses, whether it's solopreneurs or just a relatively smaller business, that is also using HubSpot, that is also working through these product updates. So what are some suggestions or thoughts that you have for maybe the smaller businesses that are coming in and just saying, I just need to set up the basics, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot. There are some people out there doing killer stuff with just starter hubs. Like I see some fascinating value pulled out of starter hubs only. And often for small businesses, unless your business model is content generation, like you've got ads on a blog or something like that, typically Sales Hub is the first one where they branch up to professional. And it's also typically the first one where they have a really strong business case to be made for that, be that B2B or B2C. And this isn't like me selling upgrades, because that's not really what it's about, but it's really bringing it back to like, when A lot of people, a lot of the conversations I end up having are like, is this worth it? And people don't necessarily do the math. So let's do a callback. In the very beginning of this call, I made a joke about job titles. Jokes aside, that company was paying $5,000 a year minimum for people to just sit down and do manual work on job title updates. Now, if I came with an app and I said, this is going to cost you $3,000 a year and it's going to fix your job titles, I'd probably get laughed out of the room, right? Then if I sit down and I just show them like a payroll slip that says, cool, here's the 5,800 you spent last year, and here's the 5,200 you're going to spend next year. So my app, which is really just it's not even going to cost you 3,000, it's going to cost you 250 because it's like a 2-hour update to your forms. All I mean by that whole conversation is to bring back, like, when you are thinking about what tools to use and where to spend your time and what product updates to worry about, don't necessarily solve for what you don't need or what product updates you don't. Think about, like, what am I doing? What are there? Okay, looking at Evelyn Wang's deck on .com/new, like, what are the updates that support the things I'm doing today? Not, is this interesting and could I do something with this 2 years from now? But what am I doing today where this update on Sales Hub just made my life easier? Does this cost, would moving up to a free to a starter hub for $50, like, how much money do I think I could generate from that in the first year? Because if it's $200 a month, then like that 50 gets validated immediately. And I don't say this to sell upgrades. I say it because I see a lot of people holding their business back because they focus on cost and not on the unlocked potential of like efficiency and value and automation. Oh my God, $100 a month, $100 a month, $100 a month. And then I ask them, like, okay, if you had that automated and you took that entire Monday's work list off your schedule, how many more deals would you think you'd sell? Three a month? Okay. And that's like $450 a month. So you're saving 100 to not make 450. And that's just, a lot of people hold themselves back. So I say that to smaller businesses, to just, if you are doing well enough and you're being held back, look at where you're spending time manually, look at what your repetitive tasks are. And if there's a starter to free jump, or typically sales starter to pro, that could save you 5 hours a month, 10 hours a month, do the math on what you're getting paid from the business. And just that opportunity cost is typically going to save you a lot of time.
I think that's a brilliant way to connect all those dots, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not just about how do we make more revenue. It is, but also where are we able to save based on what we're currently doing, right? So if it's $5,000 a year or a month or whatever the case may be in employee payroll, that time is saved. Not only now is that revenue or those are funds that are not being spent on payroll, but the employees' times are spent on other areas where they could be more productive as well.
Yeah. You do it on sales reps and it gets insane. Take back that sales rep base salary of how much time they're spending, and then now add it back to a potential % increase on deals closed. And the revenue 9 times out of 10 justifies.
And so all of this whole conversation, I want us to wrap with one more topic, which is going to be HubSpot is a product, right? You download it. It is something that you buy. It is something that you use. And there have been many conversations and discussions and debates about revenue operations enabling the use of HubSpot as a product rather than coming in as an admin working on a project. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts about whether or not that is more pedantic or if there is a legitimate case, in your opinion, to be made about really vocalizing this message that using and adopting and making adjustments to HubSpot from an admin perspective, these are product updates, not just project adjustments.
I think there's a spectrum where that changes as you move up in the hub levels you're using. So if we look at like starter, free to starter to pro to enterprise, in starter and free, it should mostly be a project. If you are spending even 5 hours a week, like doing property updates or tweaks or things that aren't getting a marketing email out and moving, like, you can move a deal, but if you're spending that much time managing your deal settings and tweaking your forms, then you're probably not spending enough time on the direct building of the business. It's a project. You set it up first, and ideally it runs pretty well. You still need some manual touches because you don't have access to automation yet. As we slide towards starter to pro, and especially pro to enterprise, 100%, it is an ongoing thing. And a big part of the reason that my job exists is because HubSpot gets given to someone as this thing that the company sometimes needs. And then that often junior marketing person realizes that they just got handed the beating heart of the business, got told it's this thing that sometimes people care about and that they need to clean it up, and they own it. And they need to suddenly, I've got a marketer who I'm educating on sales ops right now. I've got a junior level, I think they started out as a sort of an executive assistant, and now they're becoming a very heavy marketing and sales ops expert. And people, by the time I'm done working with them, are typically having title negotiation conversations because they have become something totally different when they are, because no one in the business who gave them this responsibility realized quite what they were giving them. And now every week they're meeting with the sales manager or the director of sales and the director of marketing to build the things that they want. I think both arguments are right. And it just depends, going back to the maturation argument. We talk about it as rev ops, marketing ops, sales ops. That is a thing. But maturation is really a thing of within sales, where are you? Have you ever done a cycle analysis? Do you have more than one pipeline? Have you taken onboarding out of your sales pipeline? Shout out Stuart and the Arrows team. Have you separated this? Where are you in that maturation process? And that'll tell you from a project to a product, like where you are. If you have more than one pro hub, you should typically have someone who knows what they're worth on operations.
You're on mute.
Yep. I think first time I did it. I think that's a brilliant point. I very much agree that it is very much a spectrum. And I think that the maturation of the business and businesses understanding that there is a spectrum for where they sit is important. And I think that we could have very easily a whole conversation around that, which we'll have as a bonus conversation offline. Mark, I want to kick it over to you for any closing thoughts.
Yeah, I think it was super interesting. The way you described kind of the maturation model for RevOps is, I think, perfect. And I think it's really encouraging that there's someone on the ground in this behind the scenes at HubSpot that has that mentality and speaking for the folks in the ecosystem. And so it's really exciting to watch, and appreciate your time joining us today.
Yeah, we see you guys. I came from New Breed doing implementations. I sat on consultancy, and I think I had a bit of a shock of reality too, because I stood up a pipeline internally for us to test around, and I didn't save my required properties. And then I came back to my pipeline like a day later, and I was like, "Who deleted this?" So I'm getting back in touch with my roots here.
Oh, wow.
I love it. I love it. Caleb, thank you very much for being on the SprocketPod today. Mark, always a pleasure when we get to do these together, and keep sprocketing on, everyone.
See ya.
Have a great day.